This is episode 3, a dual episode with me and Tina Anderson, the founder of Just Thrive. And we are going to be talking about probiotics, gut health, and how she had the gumption and the guts to just start a new business and leave her career as an attorney. Today on Cultivating Guts. Hello, it's Tiffany, and welcome back to Cultivating Guts podcast, a place where we discuss gardening, homesteading, gut health, and following our intuition. I am so excited to be back with you guys. I've had so many insightful moments and ideas and about really important topics, and I'm wanting to share with you on the podcast. And today I'm actually simultaneously video recording this podcast. So if you want to watch us live on YouTube, go ahead and jump over to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Tiffany Hinton. And we can eye gaze, we can be besties like we're having a chat, grab some coffee or a drink of water, and let's have a conversation. So I had this thought recently, right, and I was kind of reflecting. I was thinking about how my gut health has evolved over the last decade, how my gut health has improved drastically since finding out I had celiac disease, but also implementing a daily probiotic and the utilization of enzymes, and then also a little bit of, reflection on how my children's health has even improved with adding enzymes and probiotics to their health. And so today on the episode, we have a very unique opportunity to talk to Tina Anderson, the founder of Just Thrive Probiotics and wellness company, and really understand deeper what are probiotics, why do we need them, how our environment has changed over the years, and how important it is for us to really think about the quality of our probiotics and how they support our overall well-being. So before we start, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the Cultivating Guts podcast, and send me your screenshot of your review to tiffany@gfmomcertified.com, and we will send you our 4-day Hacking Your Health Gut Detox Plan. Also, if you are listening, screenshot your favorite part and share it with us on Instagram at gfmomcertified.com or at Cultivating Guts on Instagram. I love reposting, and I am excited to hear what your thoughts are of today's episode. I'm so grateful to you and all of our amazing listeners for helping us grow the podcast and sharing it with more people. And before we head into the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Can I share with you a secret weapon for thriving through the holiday season, thriving through life, and just keeping my gut in check, right? This is GlutenAway from Just Thrive. I love their probiotics. I found them about 10 years ago. They're a female-owned company based right here in Chicago. And this GlutenAway product that they have is a combination that is my go-to for every meal that I eat out, all of my travel, whether I'm on an airplane or in a car, or even if I'm going to a friend's house and I'm just really not sure about the cross-contamination. This helps me keep my celiac disease and Crohn's disease in remission. And when I pair this with their probiotic each day, my gut is truly thriving. I have painless stomachs. I don't really have cramps anymore. I'm regular, which is awesome, right? Nobody really wants to get constipated. And I know that I have a healthy gut colony of good bacteria living in my microbiome. Just Thrive's probiotics are a unique blend of powerful digestive enzymes. Their probiotics are designed to support optimal digestion and protect against hidden sources of tummy troubles like gluten. This GlutenAway product has the enzyme protease in it, which is scientifically proven to break down the gluten protein to make it digestible, to make it less abrasive on the gut. The resilient probiotic spores support the complex and complete digestive process and help me alleviate inflammation in my body. Our whole family uses Just Thrive's probiotics, their products, and their GlutenAway. Even my girls, you can bake with their capsules by opening them on the probiotics. The GlutenAway enzyme, like I said, I take it anytime we're eating out. I take it at restaurants, at people's houses. Even put it in my morning coffee, right? You can open it, add it to your coffee if you're not sure about the creamer or something else. And with the probiotic, you can do the same. You can add it to your coffee. Did you guys know that spore-based probiotics can survive warm temperatures even? This is how it allows us to bake with them. They can cook up to 500 degrees. And this means you can even add them to the probiotics to your morning pancake batter. Uh, we have a special community discount code just for you from Just Thrive Probiotics and their family at Just Thrive. And so the code GFMOM, GFMOM, saves you 15% off your total purchase at their website. We will add that to the show notes. We would love for you to add a bottle of Just Thrive GlutenAway and a bottle of their probiotics to your cabinets, in your kitchen, and also to your purse this season. So you have it with you anytime you're eating out or you're at a friend's house or any celebration or holiday meal. And thank you again, GlutenAway, for being our podcast sponsor. And with that, we're going to head right into the show. All right. Awesome. So Tina Anderson is the founder of Just Thrive Probiotics and now a whole line of different supplements from GlutenAway to a prebiotic to K2. And I'm super excited today to have this conversation with Tina. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My name's Tina Anderson, like you mentioned. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Just Thrive. And we basically, I started this business, my gosh, how many years? 8 years ago, something like that, maybe longer. And my husband and I were actually in the pharmaceutical world. And just we thought this was such a great field to be in because we thought, oh my gosh, we're delivering life-saving medications to people. We're changing people's lives day in and day out. But the more we were in that industry, we really started to see that really there were a lot of abuses in the pharmaceutical industry. We saw the overprescribing of medications. We saw our own relatives, where they would be on one medication for maybe a stomach issue. And then next thing you know, they had, another medication for joint issue. Then they developed a skin rash and then they were on another medication for that. Like before you know it, they'd be on like 6 different medications and not getting any better. And so we noticed that in our office too. We saw this with a lot of, we won one particular bid with one of the largest hospital systems in the country. And the pharmaceutical rep came in and said, this is great. This is wonderful. We won this great bid. You know what my job now is? My job now is to go to every cardiologist in this hospital system and lower the number that they would otherwise prescribe the drug for. So in other words, prescribing a drug, encouraging physicians to actually prescribe a drug that maybe a patient didn't necessarily need, that maybe their condition could have been changed because of lifestyle. So we were not doing our life's work, and we're huge fans of doing our life's work. We read a lot of Wayne Dyer, Norman Vincent Peale, and we decided to just dive right in and start Just Thrive. We were able to, I guess I missed probably the most important part of the story. We were able to license these really incredible probiotic strains through London University. Dr. Simon Cutting, like one of the most prominent probiotic researchers in the world. And we were able to license these very exclusive strains from London University. And from there is where Just Thrive was born. And so it's been the most gratifying career journey I've ever been on by far. I'm actually an attorney. I was in litigation for many years. Then I went into pharmaceuticals as an attorney. And now doing this has just been so amazing, especially during this time right now with COVID and everything going on, just to know that we're helping contribute to health in this world. And that's what we need to be doing.
Oh my gosh, there's like so much wrapped up right in what you just said. I remember, I felt like it was a decade ago, but maybe it was only 8 years ago. Like when you were first getting started, I think we met at one of the larger expos in the area in Schaumburg in the Chicagoland area. And then you and I sat down. I feel like I had just had a baby. That was my life back then. But like at a cafe at a grocery store, and you were talking about the probiotic and how it was spore based and how it was coming over from, like you said, from Europe and how it was different and it could regenerate and regrow and all of this. And it was life-changing. And I've never looked back. Like that's been our family probiotic from putting it in bottles to now. And it's just amazing. The other thing, Tina, that you mentioned is like you were a attorney, like a lawyer, and now you're in the pharmaceutical business. So the podcast is around cultivating guts. So healthy guts, but also guts of intuition and gumption and so as a female business owner kind of making this transition, can you share a little bit of kind of how that happened for you and maybe what you had to do or change in order to succeed?
Yeah, it's easier to look at it now looking back. I just kind of did it. There's a blog out there that says like, just ship it, just get it out, just do it, and looking back, that's just what I did. I literally was meeting with people like you. I remember that day so vividly myself. We sat there at that little grocery cafe and we talked about, the probiotic and just connecting with people and then going to shows and then making phone calls. I mean, in the beginning, it was just literally phone calls. I was cold calling stores, health food stores. And then what I found is that these health food stores are really smart people. A lot of these store owners are really, really educated on health and wellness. I mean, sometimes there's some that I've met over the years that I will go to for my own personal health if there's something going on, because they are so educated about natural health and wellness. So, but I was literally just calling some of these stores and they would be like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Like they knew that most probiotics on the market didn't really make sense from a scientific standpoint. And this all made sense to them. And then it was like, we just started getting this momentum going. And I laugh because looking back, I don't know how I did it. I mean, I had 3 kids. Right now I've got 2 that are out of college and one that's in college. But at the time I had 3 kids, all very active in sports. All of my kids play college sports, played, one is playing now. We didn't miss a game. My husband and I, we always say we're so blessed to have such a fabulous marriage. I'm madly in love with my husband 28 years later. And I love our kids. I love our family life. We have such a great family life. And I said, I don't ever want to lose that. And so what happened during the process is we didn't lose any of that. What I felt like I kind of did was lose my own self, like here I am in
Mhm.
health and wellness and I am burnt out at every end of the spectrum. I mean, we built the business, my husband and I initially for the first 3 years, we didn't have an employee, probably almost 4 years before we had an employee. And so it was crazy what we did. But we just did it. And I would always tell people my advice, if you're going to start something, first of all, follow your passion. We listened, like I said, a lot of Wayne Dyer, Norman Vincent Peale, and we believe that we weren't doing our life's work and we needed to start doing our life's work. And that's exactly what we did. And then, after when we started doing it, I would always just suggest that you hire people sooner than later. That's how we really got to grow. Once you started hiring people, that really allowed us to work on the business rather in the business. But when you're starting out, you have to work in the business. And at times I'm still in the business, so, but we have such a great team. And so that's been really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so amazing. For those that might be new to probiotics, which I know there's probably a few out there, I feel like most of my community knows what they are. But for those that are like, well, what are probiotics? Do you want to give a little background?
Yeah, well, maybe I could even, if you don't mind, go back even a little bit
Yeah.
further. I know your audience probably already knows all about the gut, but I think it's just important to remind everybody the importance of our gut health. I mean, we now know we are 10 times more bacterial cells than we are human cells. And that bears repeating because we are more bacteria than we are human. And yet we live in this world that is so incredibly offensive to our gut health, to our microbes, even like antibacterial soaps, antibacterial hand sanitizers, all of the antibacterial cleaning products that are all over that, people are using. There was a study that showed that households that use products that say kills 99.99% of the bacteria actually have children with a greater incidence of asthma, autoimmune issues, allergies, and all of those kinds of conditions, because we know that we don't want to be killing our bacteria. Our bacteria is so supportive of our health. And yet, like I said, we live in this world that's so offensive. From antibiotics is a huge offender to our gut health. Antibiotics that we just take as a single course of, let's say, clindamycin, but then antibiotics that are also found in our food supply. We find it in our meat products. We find it in our food supply. These antibiotics are so offensive to our gut health. Then we talk about Roundup, which is, of course, sprayed all over our food supply. The active ingredient in Roundup, glyphosate, is so offensive to our gut health. So with antibiotics, we know antibiotics kill the bad bacteria, which is what we want them to do, but they're also killing the good bacteria, which we don't want them to do. With glyphosate, which is sprayed everywhere, we can't get away from it, is actually only killing off the beneficial bacteria in our gut. So it's even worse than antibiotics. Stress, people think we're woo-woo, but stress is really so offensive to our gut health. There's a huge gut brain connection. And that's why people who maybe suffer from anxiety, depression, actually find out that once they start to heal their gut, they start to have better, mood reactions and are able to deal with things a lot better. So, I mean, there's just the toxins that the air we're breathing. I mean, there's just so many offenders to our gut health. And yet our gut is dictating so much of our overall health. So many of us associate gut health with digestive issues, and absolutely, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, all of those things are absolutely a sign that your gut is imbalanced. You've got some dysbiosis going on in your gut. But what people aren't realizing is that the gut is responsible for virtually every aspect of your overall health, from heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of these types of conditions. And then most importantly is 80% of our immune system is found in our gut lining. So our gut is so imperative to the health of our overall health, because it is what signals our immune cells. If our gut is not functioning properly, it's not signaling to our immune cells. We could have perfectly healthy immune cells, natural killer cells, T cells, all of these incredible immune cells that are in our body, the dendritic cells, all of those. But if our gut is not functioning properly, it fails to signal to the immune cells. So it is the most important thing that we could be focusing on in our health. It is foundational. We should all be taking the vitamin D and the vitamin C and all of these really important micronutrients, but we need to be focusing on our gut first and foremost. And
Yeah.
so I didn't really answer your question about probiotics.
No,
So
but you're good. But you touched on a couple of things, right? So I know that scientific research has shown that, like antibiotics, it can take 2 years to recover your gut after just a 1 week dosage, and then the idea that a lot of people think your hormones have to do only with your menstrual cycles, but in reality, your hormones and your sleep and all of that is controlled by your gut, and your gut helps produce those hormones. So a lot of what you just covered is, I think, so critical for people to understand.
yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the hormones, because people don't realize that our hormones are produced in our gut. And serotonin, 90% of our serotonin, our happy hormone, is produced in our gut. Dopamine is produced in our gut. GABA, which is the calming hormone, is produced in our gut. And so if we're having this dysfunctional gut, these, important hormones are not, and neurotransmitters are not being produced. So it's really important to support our gut health.
I really personally learned that myself before I was diagnosed with celiac. Like, I had all this damage done, and then we found out I had celiac disease at 27 years old, and my villi had been blunted. And I had we saw multiple doctors, but finally got a conversation with Dr. Garcia. I don't know if you've ever talked to her in Park Ridge.
Mhm.
And she explained that because the villi were short and they're blunted, they didn't have as much surface area. So
Mhm.
they couldn't store as many enzymes. They couldn't produce as much hormones. I was deficient in progesterone and a bunch of other things that were contributing to my infertility. But a lot of it was because of that gut damage. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing how it's like I said, it's hard to find any disease that's not related to an imbalance in our gut.
yeah, so
But
true.
there's good news. There's good news. One of the pieces of good news is that we can repair our guts. I mean, there are so many things that we could be doing to help support our gut health. One of the big things is just eating clean, trying to avoid, glyphosates in our food supply. Of course, avoiding gluten is super important, not just if you're celiac. There was a study that showed every single person, healthy people who have no gluten sensitivities, actually have a reaction to gluten. They just maybe don't see it. It starts to cause gut permeability or holes in the intestinal lining. So we should be avoiding gluten. We should be avoiding foods that are sprayed with glyphosate. So really trying to eat organically as possible. Eating a diverse group of foods. That's another really important thing. I think they estimate that our population nowadays eats 15 to 16 different types of foods a year, where our ancestors used to eat 500 different types of foods a year. And so we really need to start eating a diverse group of foods, from like maybe different ethnic grocery stores or finding different roots and tubers, but really trying to diversify the food that you're putting into your body. And then, like I said, mindfulness, like, meditation. Again, it's not woo woo. This is real based on science. We know that the calmer you are, the more supportive you're going to be to your gut health. And then the more you take care of your gut health, the more calmer you'll be. So it's really important to practice all of those technique, meditation, deep breathing, whatever it is that works for you. And then, of course, there are probiotics. And so, I could talk about the different types of probiotics out there, but probiotics are a huge, huge arsenal, particularly a spore based probiotic. When we launched the product, we were major disruptors in the industry. We came out with something called a spore based probiotic, which is entirely different than, and it's actually an entirely new category of probiotics that is out there. Most probiotics are made up of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains. And these strains are by nature pretty sensitive organisms. We know this because many need to be refrigerated to stay alive. So we always ask, if a probiotic needs to be refrigerated to stay alive, then how in the world would it ever survive your body temperature, which is 98.6? It can't even withstand the room temperature of the store shelf. How would it ever, survive your body temperature? And the answer is they really don't. But even if, let's say they did, they got to the stomach acid. The stomach acid is going to kill all of those bacteria, all those probiotic bacteria. And so when they get to the intestines, they actually are dead bacteria therapy. And so, and it doesn't mean that they don't do anything. They may provide some symptomatic relief, but they're not making a true change in the intestines, in your microbiome. Where spore-based probiotics are a completely different category. They actually have this endospore shell around itself, and this shell protects it. And this is not a shell that we've engineered or we've put on. These are the same type of bacterial strains that our ancestors used to get from the environment. Our ancestors used to eat roots and tubers off the soil. They ate off the land, and they would come laden with all of these dirt and the soil would have these bacteria in them. And so people would consume these on a regular basis. They were meant to be consumed on a regular basis. And so these particular bacillus spore bacteria have this endospore shell around themselves. And this shell protects them from the temperature. So like you could swallow them and the hot body temperature of 98.6 won't disrupt them. But even more importantly, they're protected in the stomach acid. We know the stomach is meant to be the gastric barrier. It's very acidic. It's meant to protect us and meant to be this barrier. But we don't want it to, that's why these strains, these probiotic strains, actually, we know that they're meant like to be formed from nature, because they actually are protected when they go through the stomach acid. And it's not till they hit the intestines that they take their shell off. And that's when they go into their live vegetative cell state. So the thing that's important to remember is the very definition of a probiotic is to be a live organism that arrives alive in the intestines that confers a benefit onto the host. The overwhelming majority of probiotics don't even meet that first part of the definition of being a live bacteria in the intestines. It's important. It's not important that they're live in the refrigerator in the store shelf. It's important that they're live by the time they get to your intestines. And that's really one of the biggest differences of spore-based probiotics, is just their ability to get to the intestines 100% alive. And then they go and actually make a true change in the gut. They are actually, changing the microbial environment, helping support the beneficial bacteria, and helping get rid of some of the pathogenic bacteria in the gut. And they stay there for about 21 to 28 days, where they're actually making a true shift in your gut microbiome.
That is so interesting, right? So as you're talking, like the dirt, the soil, the way we used to eat probably 80, 100 years ago, where we didn't scrub our food with a brush or dip it in vinegar or whatever people do
Right.
now when they bring their produce home.
Uh-huh.
Or the idea that you could walk out in your backyard, which we still kind of do here at our house, and pick something and just eat it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Nobody yells at you to make sure you wash that,
Right.
because we
Right.
don't spray anything in
Spray
our
it
own
with
yard.
glyphosate. Yes.
Right.
And Roundup.
And so I think that's a key point for people. And the other thing is, like you mentioned, oh, our vacuum cleaner is running. Sorry. if anybody out there hears that. As you mentioned, if you're doing like a kombucha or a fermented pickle, it's a different type and a different strand of probiotic. So can you talk a little bit about how you can combine those and you still need the spore based for overall health over time? And
Yeah, so the fermented foods are really important. We know they're very nutrient dense. They're really helping support our gut health. They just aren't a replacement because just like other probiotics would arrive dead in the intestines, so do the lactobacillus produced by the fermented foods. So you're going to get, but you're going to. They're very nutrient rich. I think they're incredibly supportive. For so many different reasons when you're taking ferment or when you're eating fermented foods or drinking fermented drinks, but it's definitely not a substitute because the spores actually go in there and are making a true change in the gut. And the best way to envision it, like if you envision a garden and the garden's been stepped on and trampled on and there's weeds growing all over the garden, and you compare that to your intestines. So with the spores, they go in there and they're attaching to the intestinal cell wall. They're attaching to the soil in the garden. And then they're actually helping those plants that have been stepped on and trampled on and coming back to life. And then they're helping get rid of those weeds that are very disruptive in that garden. So the spores are actually changing the makeup of the intestines. Whereas the fermented foods are creating other beneficial, nutrients and other things that are supportive of your gut health, but they're not actually making a true change in the composition of the gut.
I think that's so key. And I love that analogy of the garden and like it just starts to regrow and it regenerates because that's kind of what the spore based and probiotics do is they do
Yes.
colonize, right?
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Um, and for anybody out there that might be like, well, how do I know what kind of bacteria is in my gut? There's stool samples and they can analyze and you can tell if if you've got really high lactobacillus or you have really high candida, which is a bad one, or you've got, and so there are ways that you can do testing and then you can kind of rebalance. But if you don't want to go down that route, personally, I would suggest the Just Thrive probiotic. Um,
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's so people will ask all the time, how do I know if my gut is in balance? I mean, chances are in the world we live in, because of all the offenders, we are all we need to be supporting our gut health on a daily basis. I mean, it's, people will say, well, when I feel better, let's say they came to the probiotic because they were having maybe gas or diarrhea or constipation, bloating, whatever it might be. But then they're like, oh, do I need to take it anymore? And it's like, well, you don't have, of course not, you don't have to, but I would always recommend taking it on a regular basis just because our gut is being attacked on a daily basis. I mean, we can't get away from it, unfortunately, in the world we live in. But the good news, like I said, is that our gut is able to be repaired. And that's what we have to focus on is we can do things to make it better.
are there common symptoms or complaints that you hear from people that your brain immediately is like, oh my gosh, that's gut imbalance?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the obvious ones like the gut, you know, uh, diarrhea, constipation, all those types of things, gas, bloating, anything that's digestive in nature, of course, that gut, like, okay, you've got some gut imbalance. But skin issues is a huge one. A lot of people don't realize that they have a skin rash. I mean, if you want to try topical creams, but the bottom line is the skin rash is stemming from your gut. I mean, acne is another big one. People have acne and that's stemming from a gut imbalance. And so that's one that comes up quite a bit. And then, even like the anxiety, depression, those types of conditions that people, I'm like, I'll be like, oh, do you have, it'll be interesting. I'll say like, oh, were you like on a lot of antibiotics as a child? Well, yeah, I was on an antibiotic because I had acne, so here people are going on antibiotics because they have acne. And yet now the acne is caused by a gut disruption. And now you're adding salt to the wound by giving yourself antibiotics. It might be clearing up the acne, but it's creating more imbalance and dysbiosis in your gut. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the mood disorders and the mood issues are pretty prevalent. We hear that a lot. And we also hear like I said, the skin rashes too, outside of the obvious, like the autoimmune issues and of course, if there's an autoimmune issue, you for sure have a leaky gut. You have some, great degree of gut imbalance going on.
So the another question I'm curious about, and I'd love to hear you talk on, is pairing the prebiotic powder with the probiotic, and kind of what are the benefits when you do them in combination?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things with gut health is diversity. We want a diverse microbiome. We want different types of bacteria in different forms and shapes and sizes. We want a very diverse microbiome. That is undisputed in the health space. Everybody knows that. We know that the probiotic, the spore based probiotic alone, increases diversity by, probably tenfold. But when you add the prebiotic in there, it's reinforcing everything the probiotic is doing, but it's increasing that diversity tenfold to a hundredfold in some cases. So it's really about reinforcing what we're already doing with the probiotic, and then, really helping increase that diversity in the microbiome. It is so, like, that's why I mentioned like eating a diverse group of foods. Diversity is really, really important in our gut health. And the prebiotic is really beneficial for that. And the problem is many prebiotics on the market actually don't, the point of a prebiotic is to feed, it's the fertilizer of the gut, it's to feed the good bacteria. We don't want it to feed the bad bacteria. And that's a problem with many prebiotics on the market, is they actually don't know how to distinguish between the beneficial and the pathogenic bacteria. Where ours, we call it the precision prebiotic, because we chose specific oligosaccharides that actually target only the beneficial bacteria. So really important that you're not taking a prebiotic that's just, feeding everything in that garden. Now the garden's going to go wild because, the weeds will overgrow. Because that's why a lot of people will start taking a prebiotic and the condition actually gets worse. And that's because they're not taking care of the underlying condition of some dysbiosis and overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria.
Fertilizing the weeds. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
we don't
never
want to
a
do
good
that.
thing. Oh my gosh. That just gave me a whole vision. Oh my goodness. The other, like a few years ago, you came out with this GlutenAway.
Yes.
And I had been into enzymes already. I had done a lot of studying with Dr. Tom O'Brien, who used to be in Chicago. And he has a lot of resources on enzymes. And I was taking like full spectrum enzyme. And then this came out, and I can still take a full spectrum, which is great, but I don't always need it, or I
Mm-hmm.
don't need as much of it. And with this, for me, it was game changing when we were traveling a lot, or we were having to eat at restaurants, or I just didn't feel safe sometimes eating even at families' houses. And it's not that the gluten doesn't still do the damage from my celiac disease, but the symptoms for me are so much less. And my Crohn's disease is like almost non existent.
Wow.
Um, how did you guys like figure out like this is your one of your products that you're going to market, and what's the story behind your gluten away?
Yeah, so we are very adamant about only bringing products to the market that are missing and needed. So, we wouldn't, like the prebiotic, for example, you would have thought we're a gut health supplement company. We would have launched a prebiotic right away. Well, we didn't, because we knew there were problems with prebiotics out there. And we also knew that there were already prebiotics out there. We waited to find a prebiotic that was truly missing in the market and needed in the market. And we did the same thing with our GlutenAway. We're very careful about formulating this product. We actually worked with Dr. Tom O'Brien in formulating the product years ago. And so we know that gluten is, we know that there's people with celiac, there's people with gluten sensitivities, and like there's the other category of people, and that's everybody else. And we know that all three of those categories are negatively affected by gluten. Obviously, celiac is much more, it could be life threatening at times. It could be, very, very dramatic impact on it. People with gluten sensitivities have a lot of discomfort going on. But people that don't have any gluten sensitivities that they're aware of, we now know they do have gluten sensitivities. We do know now that the gluten is actually disrupting that gut lining and causing further damage to that intestinal cell wall, which is, critical to our overall health. So we learned about some of the ingredients, and so we decided to put together a GlutenAway product that has a really particular enzyme called tolerase G. And tolerase G is literally, the job of it is to break down gluten to non-toxic levels. It's quite profound. And again, I'd like to emphasize that we don't ever suggest that this is a free pass. It's not a get out of jail free card for gluten at all. We always want people to be avoiding gluten. There was a study done. They went to 5,000 different restaurants and found that 30 to 50% of those restaurants actually were serving food with gluten, and people didn't even know it. And even some spices are containing, wheat flour, and are creating as like a flow agent. And so they're actually, they do have trace amounts of gluten, which, as you know, someone with celiac could be very detrimental to your health. So it's really meant as an insurance, but it's also meant for people just because everybody is being exposed to gluten. And we know that gluten is disruptive to our gut lining. So the one ingredient that's really, really cool, like I said, is this tolerase G. It's an enzyme that is really, it actually, we have clinical studies on it that show that it chops up this proline-rich gluten peptide. It chops it up so completely that it becomes like a non-toxic compound for people. So it's pretty incredible. And then we added some HCl in there just because we know that those that have celiac and other gluten sensitivities basically tend to have chronically low stomach acid. And so we want to make sure that that the tolerase G actually works better in that type of environment. So really, really thought out formulation. We also added a few probiotic strains in there just to help further repair the gut lining. We wouldn't say it's a replacement for it. It's really meant to be taken maybe before a meal, especially a meal you're going to be going out, or if you go buy a gluten-free pizza from the store. And even those were one of the biggest offenders, was the gluten-free pizzas that are sold in stores. So it's really meant as an insurance policy for your gut.
Yeah. Personally, like I said, it doesn't not stop the celiac response, but it helps with the symptoms. So previously to taking an enzyme, I would be sick 3 weeks, sometimes more, with migraines, stomach issues, looking like I'm 6 to 9 months pregnant for weeks at a time, where people start asking questions you don't want them asking.
Oh, wow.
And when I started with enzymes, and honestly, I'll take 4, sometimes 6, depending on what I'm eating, because it's not like I can just go eat gluten. Cannot do that. It's in case of cross-contamination. I have to be very truthful about it. It's just for cross-contamination. And sometimes it's not enough to help. But I will take, like I said, 4 to 6 if we're eating at a restaurant and I'm still ordering off the gluten-free menu, or I'm still ordering like vegan vegetable foods, just as my security blanket.
Mm-hmm.
And now if I do get cross-contaminated, I'm only sick for about 3 days. I'm still in bed. I still have migraines. I throw up. But
Wow.
it's much better than 3 weeks
Yeah.
of that. So for me, it was a game changer, and it allowed us to kind of be a little bit more adventurous sometimes
Mm-hmm.
than just always eating at the same place all the time, or always packing food, or never eating out, or telling people I was fasting because I just didn't feel safe eating anything.
Oh, wow.
So I really, really love this. And I love that you guys worked with Dr. Tom O'Brien. That's awesome to hear. But you're right. The enzyme acts as like scissors almost, right? It cuts up the
Yep.
nutrients into micronutrients, and it gets them as small as possible,
Yep.
which is really, really awesome. I wonder too, as we're sitting here talking, what has been the biggest thing that you have heard, like not necessarily it could be a testimonial, but something from somebody where the probiotics has just been life-changing? Is there a story that's really stuck out for you?
Oh my God. There are so many there are so many because I mean, I save voicemails that I've received through the years. And I'm very passionate about children. And so I've seen that, I see with kids in this day and age, there's gluten, there's, peanut free tables, and all these kids have allergies. It's really an epidemic. And I'm, much older than you and probably most of your audience. I have 3 adult kids, but when my kids or when I was in school, there was nobody that had, I knew one kid, I shouldn't say nobody, there was one kid, K through 12, that had a peanut allergy. And now it's just this epidemic. And so I'm particularly passionate to see how it helps kids. And so we have a mom who I stay in touch with all the time, whose son is on the autism spectrum. We speak at a lot of autism events, and we know that kids on the spectrum have a lot of gut dysbiosis going on. And I mean, she's like, it's changed his life completely. It's changed his life. He became, he started going to the bathroom more regularly, which allowed him to be like happier and smile. Like there, she actually did a video on our website, and it's like, he would say like, I feel good, mommy, I feel good. And it's like, she's like, she's crying because she's like, I hadn't heard that in years. And so, I mean, I have goosebumps as I'm telling this story. It's like, just to see how it transforms people's lives. It's amazing. And that's why I'm always telling people, we started out this program, you talking about people, starting a business or doing something. I'm always trying to tell people to follow their passion, because it is the most gratifying thing to do, to, follow your passion, to know that I had a small part in like, changing this person's life is so amazing. And there's so many stories like that. There was another girl in the neighborhood who had a terrible rash. They tried every pharmaceutical out there, nothing would work. And within 3 days, she started to notice a difference, improvement. So the kids' stories are really the most, they touch me the most. But then it's interesting to talk to people who have their whole life, they've tried so many different probiotics out there. They've tried every over the counter, every pharmaceutical, had lifelong digestive issues, and really started to finally see a difference. And we've heard that story over and over again too. So it's been really, really fun.
That's amazing, especially like what you just said, the autism story and him being more regular. And I think that's a thing that for a lot of kids, if you stop changing diapers and they start going to the bathroom on their own as a parent, sometimes you lose track of how many times they're actually pooping during the day or during the week. And it can get away from us if we're not conscious of it.
Right.
And it's not a conversation that, you welcome as well. Cause I think in some families where, especially when I was growing up still, it was not a conversation you talked about. You didn't talk about how many times you went to the bathroom.
Right. No, exactly. And we were talking about this world we live in. Well, our kids were born in this like antimicrobial world. I mean, we weren't born. I was not born in that world. I mean, I didn't. My food wasn't sprayed with glyphosate and Roundup and all of that. And so our kids are at such a disadvantage from the minute that they're born, just because of that reason. So that's why it's so important that we're supporting children with their gut health. I mean, number one, most important. People take
Yeah.
their Flintstones or their, multivitamins. They're so, oh, we got to give them this. But the most important thing where you start is your gut, because if your gut is inflamed, it's not absorbing those, nutrients that you're feeding them, or, supplements that you're giving them.
Yeah. My three girls were actually born with food allergies, and over
Wow.
time, they've outgrown some of them. We've gotten rid of both of our anaphylactic allergies. I've got two girls that no longer have to carry EpiPens. But I think it's what you just said. It's that continual gut health support. It's regrowing their microbiomes. It's helping, their bodies just become more, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for? Like it's the
Resilient.
microbiome, but yeah, more resilient and like more diverse, right? Their
Yes.
their their body has become more diverse, and the bacteria on their skin and in their gut is now more diverse. And we intentionally do things that we want to create that healthier environment for them.
Right.
So
No, absolutely. And you brought that up, that your children were born with these allergies, and that's likely because your microbiome was compromised because you have celiac, so we know that. So a
yeah,
mother passes on her microbiome to the child during vaginal childbirth. And so this is another area I'm pretty passionate about, is pregnant moms. I mean, pregnant moms need to be supporting their microbiome, because the biggest gift you could give your kids is to give them these healthy bacteria. So everyone, and most people don't even know that they have these issues when they're pregnant. And so that's why I'm always saying, just support your microbiome, because you're giving that to your child. So it's quite interesting.
that is amazing. I have one last question for you. The one question we've been asking everybody is, how do you cultivate guts every day in your daily life?
How do I cultivate? So do you mean like from a health perspective, or
Whatever came to mind. How are you cultivating guts?
how am I? Well, I think honestly, just, I mean, trying to spread the word with, gut health. I feel like I've become like a little bit of a preacher. I feel bad, like like my community, where I live. I'm always telling everybody. I'm in my church. Everywhere I go, I'm always talking about it. I feel like I'm this used car salesperson, but I'm so passionate about it. I mean, we have a joke in our family that every time Tina says the word probiotic, everyone has to drink because it's like a drinking game, because they're like, oh my gosh, Tina, you talk about it so much, because I'm so, it's not about we've built a business. We've had, we've been blessed with success in our business. That's great. But it's about impacting lives. It's really about impacting lives. So I think that's just trying to go out every day and changing one life. When I'm talking to somebody, I had somebody over at the house today, and I was talking to her and giving her more information about gut health and how we could try to help her kids who are suffering with some issues, but just trying to spread that word on a regular basis and just trying to impact lives.
I love it. So you're cultivating your own gut, but you're also cultivating guts across the world. That's
That's
awesome.
my plan,
So amazing.
definitely.
Love it. So for our listeners today, down in the show notes, you're going to find our affiliate link with a code that's going to get you 15% off your total purchase over at Just Thrive. And we want to say thank you for that, Tina, and thank you for continuing to support our community
Yeah,
by offering amazing products.
absolutely. Thank you so much for the work you do, Tiffany. You're doing such a great job, and I'm so proud of where you've come, and great job from
Thank
where we
you.
started in the little coffee shop. So,
It has been a journey. I totally appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today.
yep. Thank you.
All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Tina from Just Thrive. Share with me your favorite part, and also share with me how your body responds if you start trying a probiotic, especially if you start trying the Just Thrive probiotic. What are your changes that you see in 21 days? Ask me any questions. I'm here for you, and I'm excited to see all of your benefits. Satnam, I love you guys, and thank you for coming today. So if you enjoyed and love this episode, remember to share it with your friends and send it to anyone who may love this inspiration and information that we shared. To get my latest book, which is our 2021 holiday guide, I want you to visit Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or the link in our bio on Instagram, or even in the show notes down below. And you can get a printed copy, a digital copy, or a PDF copy of our brand new holiday guide, the 2021 edition, which is super cool and amazing, full of recipes, stories, sustainability, shopping local, having small intimate parties, and charcuterie board ideas. I also want you to know that there is a really big transformation happening with GF Mom Certified. We talk more about that on our blog, but we are moving more into this cultivating space in the new year. And so we have a special right now. If you email us at tiffany@gfmomcertified.com, you can get your garden consult, which is a Green Witch garden planning 90-minute session with me to lay out and plan your garden based on your health needs for 2022's gardening season for only $125. This special is only good through the end of the year, and then the prices will go back up to over $200 a session. I'm super excited to help people get going with their 2022 gardening planning, get their seeds ordered, and get things started and laid out so they know that they're going to have a garden that supports their health. I also will tell you that if you are looking for an online gardening class, to jump over to our Podia online masterclass for gardening and gut health over at tiffanyhinton.podia.com. And there you will find all the things you need to get going and growing your own food and to help your gut.